Welcome to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Episode 3, here on the Let's Do This part of the Doodling channel. This was originally going to be the finale, and then I realized 2 minutes in, or not 2 minutes, but 2 hours into recording footage that, yeah, we're not really gonna, it's not really a good idea to shove this all into one episode. So, this is gonna be Oil Ocean Zone, and then the next zone will be Metropolis, and then the finale will cover the last part of the game and the final boss. So, welcome to Oil Ocean Zone, and this is Zone 1, or sorry, Act 1. And there are a couple of things that are introduced that are kind of new. There's a lot of use of these platforms that sort of fall away when you're on top of them, and a lot of use of these things that are launched in the air. We have these seahorse enemies that don't... I mean, it is called Oil Ocean, so I guess that's why they're there, but you wouldn't necessarily expect to see those. The decorations sort of have a Middle Eastern theme as far as the rings and the use of colors. So, I mean, those are some things that are going on with this level. And this is another attempt for me to grab a Chaos Emerald. And, spoilers, I don't think I make it. Again, the reason I have trouble with these little sections has to do with the sliding around. Just not able to get the precise stop on the half pipe that you need in order to get all the rings and stay where you want to stay. Again, I don't know if that's a product of me, product of the fact that I was using the control stick instead of the D-pad. But, you know, since we were playing with Tails anyway, and Supersonic was not going to come into the cards, I wasn't really too concerned about this. But I think this marks the furthest that I that actually got through the half pipe, and we didn't get enough rings. Even though for the first time we actually saw the emerald, which was nice. Other features of this zone, we've seen briefly. We saw the little oil chutes. Now, oil is not water, and it's also not Megamac, which is the other two liquids that we've seen in this game. So you can actually jump on it if you're quick. However, you can still sink and die in it if you don't react fast enough. And this level also, you know, if you take a wrong jump, just because of the way it's designed to go back and forth, you can end up back at the beginning or the place you were much further ago. And this brings us to another thing that this level does a lot of and isn't repeated anywhere else. And that's the little balloons that shoot you around. These artillery enemies are only present here. They aren't present in any other level. So here you can see us going down the oil, but we can actually jump up the oil in a way that we cannot jump up the water in Mystic Ruin, or not Mystic Ruin, Aquatic Ruin, or jump up the Megamac material in Chemical Plant. So we're getting shot around here. And there's a lot of going up and down elevators in this level. And you just kind of have to go with it. It's not like the anything's positioned in a way that would seem to make a ton of sense. And so here we are going back into more balloon cannons. And here's another sequence involving these little shooters. You'll notice the flames underneath the shooters. They can hurt you, and if you've been paying attention, they have hurt us. As we finish Act 1, holding on to about 53 rings. So I mean, that wasn't a bad effort by us. But now we're moving into Oil Ocean Zone Act 2. I'm not really a big fan of the aesthetic preferences here, just because it just reminds me too much of pictures from the first Persian Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein lit some of his oil wells on fire, or lit the Kuwaiti oil wells on fire. I forget whose oil wells he was lighting on fire, but the idea is the same. But you would get that same red glow in the background. I mean, I know this is supposed to reflect sunset, and the next level is going to be completely dark, so you're kind of doing this day to night sort of transition. But it's just a little eerie as far as I'm concerned. You also have to be careful. In Act 1, there were places where if you just shot off an oil slick, you would end up in the oil at the bottom of the level, which normally would kill you. In Level 2, in Act 2, the oil usually would shoot you into situations where the physics of being shot would help you out at the end. You can see I'm trying desperately not to go down this slide, because I think that it's only going to lead me to my death. And it really doesn't here. You know, that fan prevents me from getting sucked in, so jumping around the little octillery creatures. And this is what I mean by the oil doesn't kill you as long as you jump out of it. So utilize the vent to get back up. And now we're back to using these things. I was pretty good at avoiding the spikes, I think, in most of the level. That time, didn't quite get there. I think there's an extra life on that platform over there, or possibly something else like it. But I get the invincibility here, and I start to get the idea that these are longer. You know, these levels are longer levels compared to certainly Emerald Hill and Chemical Plant. There's just a lot of stuff here. And when we get to Metropolis Zone, we'll see examples of there being lots of stuff and lots of different ways to go. Here, just trying to figure out one path. You know, in that case, the little those things are helpful because they kind of tell you where you can and can't go. So here we're playing in the oil. What I'm trying to do is set up to do a spin dash to get up this ridge, and I decide just to jump. And that time we managed to run up that edge, but this doesn't actually go anywhere. So we're going to have to go back down into the oil and grab this check mark here. And since I'm aware that checkpoints, that there will be a checkpoint right before the boss, you know, I'm very aware of that this might be it. And then I get this long sequence that suggests that yes, this is where we are. Now we can jump in the oil. I have the invincibility, so I'm not worried about being hit by Eggman or the little scorpion shooter that he sends out, and then the gun. Okay, so they'll shoot 3 times, and then the third one will light the platform on fire. So you just jump to the other platform, then you attack Eggman when he's guys submarine in between the two. And because of the invincibility, which I really kind of lucked into, we took out that Eggman boss without too much trouble in comparison to a couple of other Eggman bosses that we'll run into between now and the end of the game. And now that we've gotten through Oil Ocean, which presumably fuels Eggman's creations, we're now in Metropolis, where they are built. And you can see the gas pipe. You saw that the gas that shoots out of those things can hurt us. I feel like that was something that was introduced in Sonic 1 in not Mad Gear Zone, Scrap Brain Zone. And you're going to see a lot of sort of Scrap Brain Zone elements and design. These I think are called shell crackers, and they're placed very annoyingly. There's also these stars that shoot mines or projectiles. They are also pretty annoying. Now, they will target you when you get close to them, but only they know how close you have to get in order for that to happen. So sometimes they'll leave you alone. And this will be particularly true on screw segments. If you're on the screw and you don't like walk too far toward the wall, they'll ignore you. But the minute you start jumping around on the screw, they will find you. So now we got our shield, and we're using the bouncy castle walls here to get further along. We find our first screw. Let's see if we can find some. And see, here they are. You can see one of them over here. There's a second one. But because I'm not walking toward them, they're not trying to do anything to me. It's not always possible to avoid them like that. Now, on some of these screws at the top, there are spikes, and some of them there aren't. You can be smashed either way, so you need to be careful and not get stuck riding the screw too far. So now we're moving around on all of these switches and stuff. See, that time I jumped too close, landed too close to the star, and it fired its little thingies, and knocked off my shield. If you can stay sort of in the middle of the, I guess this is technically a nut. You can stay in the middle of the nut, you'll be fine. Okay, another thing that this level likes to do, besides lots of the star guys in various places, they also like the little blocks that have spears sticking out of them. And unlike earlier versions of this thing in places like Labyrinth Zone in Sonic 1, these will actually rotate on their schedule, which means you have to be very careful about how you approach them. You need to make sure you don't land on them when you're about to switch to their top spear position. Then there's this sequence, which kind of reminded me of Labyrinth Zone. Just because it seemed like we did a lot of falling before we stopped falling. And we also got introduced there at the very end to another enemy type who's going to be annoying and is going to be hanging around with us for the last 2 parts of Metropolis Zone, and that is the Slicer. Sort of a mantis, except that he shoots his he shoots his little tendrils or whatever at you, and they will continue to follow you for a fair distance. If you're close enough to him when he throws them, they won't respawn. However, if you back away from a Slicer and run away and go back and get a ring or something and then come back, the Slicer can regain his can certainly regain his weapons. Let's just call them that. Right? You can walk on the lava as long as you're in your invincibility phase, so we lost our shield unfortunately, but it didn't kill us. And so now we need to again use the bouncy castle to heat up the row. Going around. This is where we were a second ago. I think this time we handled the little blocks better. And now we're headed up this screw. And this was one of the more annoying screws in the game, because for some reason, even when you're in the middle of it, you're still too close to the placement of one of these star mines. Now, unlike the Slicers, the star mines will not respawn, so once he's fired his weapon, he disappears. So you can see he was not there to screw us up again. Although I got stuck on a couple of those giant screws because, when you get knocked off the screw does not return to the bottom. It stays where it is until you have to walk away far enough from it for it to reset. Then another issue that I ran across in Metropolis Zone, although it wasn't not really the case here, had to do with some of the positions of some of the ramps. There was a lot of going up cylinders and then trying to land on a platform that was not part of the curvature of the thing you were running up. See if I can find an example. Whoa! And of course, he was well placed. Now, let me explain what just happened there. What happened there is that in my original life, I got stuck on a couple of these curves and actually ran out of time. So instead of loading a previous save, I just let the game take me back to the last checkpoint with the time still there. And here's where you'll notice that the Slicers are different than the little starmen, because the Slicers respawned their weapons. I got lucky there. I was in the invincibility frames from spikes when the Slicer showed up. And now this is a little bit of a platforming segment you've got to be careful about, because again, those things are on a rotating basis, and if And sometimes the third one is off screen when you run across the first two. So you may not know exactly where it is. Now this is one of these ramp sections where I was talking about where you have to get off of the curve and onto the platform. And for some reason, either because of timing, because you can't see it when you launch, or possibly again control issues, we just couldn't get this to go. And so once we were finally on it, I was feeling much better. Of course, since I had already done one, and then that happened. Yeah. I really didn't appreciate that. I don't have the ability to do these things live, per se. But I'm pretty sure that would have been not a particularly happy moment if it had been live. And then we got our shield knocked off by a stray shot from one of those star guys. Again, I really got tired of seeing those. And the worst part of this is this isn't even the end of Metropolis Zone. Every level, or every world or stage in Sonic 2 has 2 acts, with one exception. There is a third act to Metropolis Zone, based on, I think, content that they cut off of ideas that they didn't use in the game. But so you can see I'm having, once again, trouble with that, with those curves. And so, I finally get over. I'm just so glad that that part's done with. And fortunately, the end of the level is right there. So we get through Act 2, but again, we're not done with Eggman's workshop here. We have to go through one more zone in Metropolis. And there's a slicer just waiting to greet us. Here's one of the newer gimmicks of this stage. The little gears pulling the platform between them. Of course, the placement of shell crackers that close to the wall. Nothing new. You can't see them, but and really on some of these jumps, it got to the point where I was trying to be careful about it. Oh, and there's our other friend, the curve that leads to the platform that we have to jump on. Fortunately, this one didn't take us all that long. And our other friends, the mines who like to hang out near screws. So here I tried to, because the mines are tracking your current movement speed as to where they'll shoot, trying to slow down around them actually is a reasonable tactic. And after getting through a bunch of them, then we didn't get through that one on the bottom. Now here's an example of one of the things that Metropolis Zone does really well. That is having lots of different route options. So we're going up, but I'm pretty sure there's a way you could have gone down there. Okay, and there's a checkpoint. Always like those. So we're and that I thought that was a little cheap there. getting hit by the gas after sort of getting by it. And then you got to be careful about this, because obviously this platform leads into those spikes. So he's got to get off of it at the right time, and of course, trying to run fast, we end up running right into the slicer. And there's another one right here, whose butt we hit. I wasn't a big fan of some of the hit detection on some of the enemies, because I could be in the middle of a jump, and if I hit the ground before I hit them, it's almost like the game would consider me to not be jumping. And so therefore I would get hit, and the enemy might be fine. So now we're going to do a going down the pathway bit. There are parts of Metropolis Zone that take their their motivation, I guess, from Scrap Brain. But you can see there's also some different things going on. These those teleporters are holdover from Scrap Brain Zone. And yeah, get used to me just running into slicer fire. I never quite I'm not sure I ever quite pulled that off in this playthrough. One thing that seems fairly obvious here is that Tails cannot fly in Sonic 2. That is something that he gets in Sonic 3. And I was really concerned about that slicer hit, because I thought I was going to fall down the tube and the screw was going to stay up there. We find another checkpoint. So Tails' running animations are show that he uses his tails to propel him around, rather than actually running like Sonic. So when my friend and I played Sonic 2 way back when, this boss was really troublesome for him as Sonic. So I basically told him, okay, well, I'm Tails, I'm invincible, let me handle it. And so basically his whole strategy was to stay out of the way as I kept attacking Eggman until he knocked off all the Eggman things. That was really the first time that as we get through the act, that was the first time that I really understood we can abuse Tails as a partner all the heck. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time for the finale.